Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Whispers of Deception. Bryce Harrington wiped the sweat from his brow as he tightened the final bolt on the support beam. His construction company, Harrington Builders, was finishing their biggest project yet, a luxury condominium complex that would cement his reputation as one of the city's premier builders. At 35, Bryce had built his empire from nothing, fueled by a relentless work ethic and uncompromising standards. "Looking good, boss," called Liam, his foreman. "Inspections tomorrow at 9. Bryce nodded, surveying the site with critical eyes. "Make sure everything's perfect. I don't want a single issue." His phone buzzed with a message from his wife, Adriana. "Doctor, move my appointment to 3 p.m. tomorrow. Dad's picking me up." A frown crossed Bryce's face. For the past 3 months, his father-in-law, Raymond Kessler, had inserted himself into every aspect of Adriana's medical care since her diagnosis with a rare inflammatory condition. What had begun as occasional help had morphed into something more controlling. "Everything okay?" asked Liam. "Yeah," Bryce muttered, pocketing his phone. "Just family stuff." That evening, Bryce returned to their spacious colonial home to find Adriana sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone. At 33, she still possessed the striking beauty that had first caught his attention at a charity gala 7 years ago. Fiery auburn hair, penetrating green eyes, and a smile that could disarm even the most hardened skeptics. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "Better," she replied, subtly angling her phone away from his view. "Dad brought me some new supplements the specialist recommended." Ray was here again. Bryce tried to keep his voice neutral. "I thought we agreed I'd handle the pharmacy runs." Adriana shrugged. "He was in the neighborhood. Besides, he enjoys feeling useful since retirement." Bryce bit back his frustration. Raymond Kessler, former chief financial officer for one of the nation's largest investment firms, had never approved of his daughter marrying a blue-collar entrepreneur despite Bryce's success. "I'd like to come to your appointment tomorrow," Bryce said, pouring himself a whiskey. "I've cleared my schedule." A flash of something, alarm, crossed Adriana's face. "That's not necessary. You have the inspection tomorrow, remember? Dad already arranged to take me. I can reschedule the inspection." "Bryce," she sighed, "you know how important this project is. Besides, these appointments are boring. It's just reviews and medication adjustments." Later that night, Bryce lay awake, listening to Adriana's steady breathing beside him. Something felt off. Her condition had appeared suddenly 6 months ago, with mysterious symptoms that shifted and changed. The treatments were expensive and seemed to vary constantly, but whenever he asked questions, Adriana grew defensive. The next morning, Bryce made a decision. After checking that Adriana was still asleep, he quietly called the foreman to handle the inspection and headed to his brother's apartment. Floyd Harrington, 3 years younger than Bryce, had always lived in his shadow. While Bryce built his construction empire, Floyd drifted between jobs, relying on his charm and his brother's generosity. Currently, Floyd worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, a position Bryce had secured through one of his clients. When Floyd opened the door, his disheveled appearance suggested he'd just woken up. "Bryce? What's up, man? Thought you had that big inspection today." "We need to talk," Bryce said, stepping inside the cluttered apartment. "About Adriana's condition." Floyd shifted uncomfortably. "What about it?" "You're in pharmaceutical sales. You know doctors. I need a straight answer about this treatment plan Ray's pushing." "Look, bro, I don't specialize in her condition," Floyd stammered. "Besides, isn't Ray just helping out?" "He's taking over," Bryce said flatly. "And I want to know why." Floyd avoided eye contact. "Maybe talk to her doctor directly?" "I've tried. They'll only speak to Adriana or Ray." Bryce studied his brother's nervous demeanor. "You're acting strange. Is there something I should know?" "No, just medical stuff makes me nervous." Floyd checked his watch. "Hey, I've got a meeting across town. We'll catch up later, okay?" As Bryce left, his suspicions deepened. Floyd was hiding something. Chapter 2. The Power Play. Bryce decided to surprise Adriana at her 3 p.m. appointment. When he arrived at the specialist's office, he spotted Ray in the waiting room, his imposing figure impossible to miss. At 68, Raymond Kessler still projected the authoritative presence that had intimidated countless employees throughout his career. "Bryce," Ray acknowledged coldly. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I'm her husband," Bryce replied. "Where is she?" "With the doctor. We should be called back shortly." When a nurse appeared, Ray stood immediately. "We're ready." "I'm coming too," Bryce stated firmly. Ray's expression hardened. "That's not necessary. I've been handling Adriana's care. She's my wife. And my daughter." Ray's voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "Who do you think has been making sure she gets proper treatment while you're busy playing with your little construction toys?" Bryce felt his temper rising. "I'm coming in." Ray placed a hand on Bryce's chest, stopping him. "No, you're not. What the hell gives you the right?" "This does." Ray pulled a document from his briefcase, thrusting at Bryce. "Legal medical power of attorney, signed by Adriana and notarized last month. I make the medical decisions now." Bryce stared at the document in disbelief, recognizing Adriana's elegant signature at the bottom. "This is bullshit. Why would she do this without discussing it with me?" "Because she knows I have her best interests at heart," Ray replied smugly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my daughter's doctor." Stunned, Bryce watched as Ray disappeared behind the clinic doors. He studied the power of attorney document, noting it had been notarized by someone named Patricia Wilcox. The name sounded familiar. That evening, when Adriana returned home, Bryce confronted her in their bedroom. "Why did you give your father medical power of attorney without telling me?" he demanded. Adriana's eyes widened briefly before her expression softened. "It's just a precaution, Bryce. Dad suggested it in case decisions need to be made while you're working. You know how consumed you get with your projects. That's what marriage is for. We make those decisions together. Why are you shutting me out?" "I'm not," she insisted, taking his hands. "It's temporary, just until this treatment cycle is complete. Dad understands all the medical jargon better than we do. His college roommate was a renowned immunologist, remember?" Something in her explanation felt rehearsed. Bryce pulled away. "I want to be more involved in your treatment. No more appointments without me." "Bryce, be reasonable. Your schedule is unpredictable, and these appointments often come up suddenly." "Then they wait until I can be there," he insisted. "It doesn't work that way." Adriana's voice took on an edge. "This is my health we're talking about." The argument ended in stalemate, with Adriana retreating to the guest bedroom. Bryce spent the night researching medical power of attorney and made a disturbing discovery. Patricia Wilcox, the notary, was Ray's former executive assistant. The next morning, Bryce called Dr. Bennett, Adriana's primary physician and an old college friend. "I can't discuss Adriana's case, specifically due to privacy laws," Bennett said carefully after Bryce explained the situation. "But I can tell you I've been concerned about some of the specialist referrals. They weren't ones I recommended." "Who recommended them?" A pause. "Her father provided the names." "And the treatments? The medications?" "Again, I can't discuss specifics. But I'll say this as your friend. Follow the money." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just follow the money, Bryce. That's all I can say." Chapter 3. Shattered Illusions. Bryce began tracking the family finances more carefully. He discovered large withdrawals from their joint account, tens of thousands of dollars for treatments not covered by insurance. When he questioned Adriana, she became defensive, accusing him of not supporting her recovery. One evening, while Adriana was supposedly at a physical therapy session with Ray, Bryce received a call from a subcontractor about an emergency at a job site. Rushing to his home office for the necessary documents, he noticed Adriana's tablet on the coffee table. She'd always kept her devices locked, but to his surprise, the tablet unlocked with their anniversary date. A notification appeared from a messaging app he didn't recognize. Curiosity overcoming his usual respect for her privacy, he tapped it. What he found shattered his world. Messages between Adriana and Floyd dating back over a year revealed not only their affair, but a calculated scheme. His brother and wife had been lovers before Adriana's mysterious illness appeared. The illness itself was largely fabricated, Real symptoms exaggerated and manipulated to justify expensive treatments that were funneling money into offshore accounts controlled by Ray. Dad's almost got the POA finalized. One message from Adriana to Floyd read, "Once we have full control of the medical decisions and accounts, we can increase the transfers without Bryce noticing." Floyd's response turned Bryce's blood cold. "Your dad's brilliant. By the time your condition requires extended care abroad, we'll have cleaned out enough to disappear. The dumb bastard works so hard he doesn't even notice what's happening under his nose." As Bryce scrolled through months of messages, the full scope of their betrayal became clear. Ray had never accepted him and had orchestrated this elaborate scheme to not only drain Bryce's assets, but destroy his reputation in the process. Once they'd extracted enough money, Adriana would file for divorce, claiming Bryce had become neglectful during her illness. The most recent message from Floyd made Bryce's hands shake with rage. "Can't wait for tomorrow. After your appointment, come straight to my place. Your dad will cover with another bad reaction story if Bryce calls. 3 more months, and we're home free, baby." Bryce closed the tablet and sat in stunned silence. Then, with cold precision, he began taking photos of the messages as evidence. Next, he contacted his lawyer, Maxwell Thornton. "Meet me at my office in an hour," Max said after hearing a brief explanation. "Bring everything you found. And Bryce, don't confront them yet. The element of surprise is our only advantage." When Adriana returned that evening, flushed and claiming the physical therapy had been exhausting, Bryce played his role perfectly. He expressed concern, offered to make dinner, and pretended nothing had changed. Inside, however, his mind was calculating every move in the war that was about to begin. Chapter 4: Gathering Intelligence. "They've created the perfect scam," Maxwell explained the next morning in his downtown office. At 55, Max had built a reputation as a ruthless divorce attorney who specialized in complex asset protection. Medical power of attorney gives Ray control over treatment decisions. With fabricated medical records, they can justify enormous expenses while painting you as the negligent husband if you question anything. "How did I not see this coming?" Bryce asked, staring out the window at the city skyline he'd helped shape. "Because you trusted them," Max replied. "That's not weakness, but they've exploited it as one. Now, we need to be smarter. Have you checked your business accounts? They're separate from our personal accounts. Check them anyway. People this calculating don't stop at one target." A review revealed attempted access to his business accounts. Unsuccessful, but concerning. "We need more evidence," Max advised. "Right now, it's your word against theirs, and with those medical records and the POA, they have a compelling narrative." Bryce hired Dominic Russo, a former military intelligence officer turned private investigator. Dominic installed discreet surveillance in the home and began tracking the trio's movements. The evidence mounted quickly. Adriana spent most afternoons at Floyd's apartment while supposedly at therapy sessions. Ray regularly met with doctors outside normal office hours, carrying envelopes that Dominic suspected contained cash payments for falsified records. And most damning of all, Adriana showed no symptoms of her condition when she thought no one was watching. "They're planning to move against you soon," Dominic reported after 2 weeks of surveillance. "I intercepted a call between Ray and their lawyer. They're preparing to request temporary control of all marital assets due to your wife's deteriorating condition and need for specialized treatment abroad." "When?" Bryce asked. "After next Tuesday's appointment with the specialist. They're going to claim a significant downturn that requires immediate intervention." Bryce nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then we move first." His first step was securing his business. Bryce created a new operating agreement with his trusted CFO that would prevent any outside interference, even from spouse. Next, he methodically documented all of Adriana's activities that contradicted her claimed medical condition. The hardest part was maintaining his facade at home. Each night, he returned to share dinner with a woman who was plotting his financial ruin, pretending he knew nothing while she performed her role as the concerned, loving wife. "You seem distracted," Adriana commented one evening. Is everything okay with the Rivera project? Just some permitting issues, Bryce lied smoothly. Nothing I can't handle. You work too hard, she said, touching his arm with practiced concern. I worry about you. Bryce smiled tightly. I'll be fine. How was therapy today? Exhausting, she sighed dramatically. But Dad says Dr. Westfield is seeing improvement. That's good, Bryce replied, knowing she'd spent the afternoon in Floyd's bed rather than any doctor's office. I'm glad he's so involved. The betrayal cut deepest when he thought about Floyd. His brother, who he'd supported financially for years, given jobs when no one else would hire him, paid for his rehab after a cocaine addiction in his 20s. This was his repayment. One afternoon, Bryce visited their mother, Eleanor, at her modest home across town. At 70, she remained sharp and perceptive. Something's troubling you, she observed as they sat on her porch. You haven't been yourself lately. Bryce hesitated, then told her everything. Eleanor listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly grim. Floyd was always jealous of you, she finally said. Even as a child. Your father saw it, tried to correct it, but after he passed. She shook her head. I never imagined he'd go this far. I need to know if you'll be okay when this all comes out, Bryce said. Because I'm not showing mercy, Mom. Not to any of them. Eleanor took his hand. You do what you need to do. Floyd made his choice. Now he faces the consequences. Chapter 5. The Siege. The following week brought escalation. Ray began contacting Bryce's clients, subtly suggesting that family issues might affect project timelines. 2 potential clients unexpectedly backed out of deals, citing concerns about Harrington Builders' stability. Meanwhile, Floyd approached several of Bryce's subcontractors, offering them work with a competing firm while hinting that Bryce would soon be stepping back from the business due to personal matters. They're trying to isolate you professionally, Max observed during their daily briefing. Create doubt about your capability to fulfill contracts. Bryce nodded grimly. Ray's using his financial world connections. 3 of my banking contacts suddenly went cold this week. The pressure increased at home as well. Adriana began displaying more pronounced symptoms around Bryce. Trembling hands, sudden weakness, memory lapses. She started suggesting that managing their home was becoming too difficult. Maybe we should consider selling, she mentioned casually over breakfast. Move somewhere smaller, easier to maintain. Dad found a lovely condo near his place. This is our home, Bryce replied firmly. We built it together. Adriana's eyes narrowed slightly before she composed her features. Of course, but with my condition. I'm just thinking practically. The next day, Bryce received a call from their bank regarding an attempted transfer of $200,000 from their joint account to an overseas account. The transaction had been flagged and temporarily halted. Did you authorize this transfer, Mr. Harrington? The fraud department representative asked. Absolutely not, Bryce confirmed. Please block it permanently. When confronted, Adriana claimed ignorance, suggesting it must have been a banking error. However, the surveillance footage Dominic had installed showed her making the transfer attempt while on a video call with Floyd, both of them laughing. The situation reached a breaking point when Ray showed up at Bryce's office unannounced, accompanied by a man he introduced as Dr. Lancaster. We need to discuss Adriana's care plan, Ray announced, settling into a chair without invitation. What care plan? Bryce asked coolly. She needs specialized treatment only available at a facility in Switzerland, Ray explained. Dr. Lancaster here has been consulting on her case and agrees it's her best option. The supposed doctor nodded solemnly. The treatment protocol requires an extended stay, at least 6 months. The facility requires payment up front due to the experimental nature of the treatment. And how much would this experimental treatment cost? Bryce asked. Approximately $1.2 million, Ray stated. Given the circumstances, I suggest liquidating some of your business assets. Bryce leaned back in his chair, studying the 2 men. Interesting timing, considering the Rivera project closes next month with a substantial profit. This isn't about money, Ray said with practiced indignation. This is about my daughter's health. Of course, Bryce replied evenly. I'll need to review the treatment documentation. Have the facility send me all the information directly. There's no time for that, Ray insisted. Adriana, needs to begin treatment immediately. Then you should have no problem providing me with all the details. After all, you have her best interests at heart, right? Ray's jaw tightened. The specialists won't release detailed protocols to non-medical personnel. That's why we have the power of attorney arrangement. I see. Bryce stood. Well, gentlemen, I have a meeting. I'll consider the Swiss option and get back to you. After they left, Bryce immediately called Dominic. I need everything you can find on a Dr. Lancaster who supposedly specializes in inflammatory conditions. Something tells me his medical license might not exist. The investigation confirmed Bryce's suspicion. Dr. Lancaster was actually Gregory Lancaster, a former business associate of Ray's with no medical training whatsoever. The Swiss clinic was real, but had never heard of Adriana Harrington or any treatment plan for her. They're getting desperate, Max noted when Bryce shared this information. Ray probably expected you to transfer the money immediately without asking questions. He doesn't know me very well, Bryce replied coldly. That evening, Bryce received a text from Floyd. We need to talk. Alone. It's important. They met at a quiet bar downtown. Floyd looked nervous, constantly checking his surroundings. I'm worried about Adriana, Floyd began, his voice low. Ray's pushing her too hard with this scheme. She's not sleeping, constantly stressed about keeping up appearances. Sounds challenging, Bryce replied neutrally. Playing sick must be exhausting. Floyd froze. What are you talking about? Cut the act, Floyd. I know everything. The affair, the fake illness, Ray's embezzlement scheme. All of it. Floyd's face drained of color. Bryce, listen, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do now that I know? Floyd leaned forward urgently. Ray's dangerous when crossed. He's got connections you wouldn't believe. If you confront him directly, he'll destroy you. Is that concern for me? Or are you worried about losing your meal ticket? I'm serious, Bryce. The man's ruthless. When his former partner threatened to expose some financial irregularities years ago, the guy ended up with federal charges for crimes he didn't commit. Ray planted evidence. Bryce studied his brother thoughtfully. Throwing Ray under the bus won't save you, Floyd. I know that, Floyd whispered. But maybe I can help minimize the damage. For Mom's sake, if nothing else. You lost the right to invoke her name when you slept with my wife, Bryce replied coldly, standing to leave. Enjoy the rest of your drink. It might be your last taste of freedom for a while. Chapter 6. Laying the Trap. Over the next week, Bryce methodically prepared his counterattack. He met with Dr. Bennett, who agreed to provide a statement regarding his concerns about Adriana's specialists and treatment plan. Bryce also secured affidavits from 2 nurses at the specialist's office who had observed Ray's unusual behavior and suspected impropriety. Max connected him with Judge Sophia Alvarez, who had clashed with Ray during his corporate days and harbored no love for the man. She reviewed the power of attorney document and identified several procedural irregularities that could invalidate it. The notary, Patricia Wilcox, apparently didn't witness the actual signing, Judge Alvarez noted. That alone could nullify the document. Bryce's most unexpected ally came in the form of Natalie Kessler, Ray's ex-wife and Adriana's mother. Long divorced from Ray and habitually excluded from Adriana's life, Natalie had built a new life in Arizona. When Bryce explained the situation, she wasn't surprised. Ray used similar tactics during our divorce, she explained during their video call. Created false narratives, manipulated evidence, used his connections to pressure me into a settlement. He's always been obsessed with control. Did you know Adriana was involved in something like this? Natalie sighed heavily. Ray shaped her from childhood to value power and wealth above all else. I tried to counterbalance his influence during visitations, but her voice trailed off. I failed her as a mother. You're not responsible for her choices, Bryce assured her. No, but I'm willing to help expose Ray's. I have documentation from our divorce that establishes a pattern of financial manipulation and coercion. It might help your case. With each piece of evidence, the picture became clearer. Ray had orchestrated similar schemes before, though never at this scale. His corporate career had ended not with the glorious retirement he claimed, but with a quiet, forced resignation after financial irregularities were discovered. Dominic uncovered offshore accounts in Ray's name containing millions, likely from previous schemes. He also found evidence that Ray had pressured Adriana's doctors into unnecessary treatments and tests, from which he received kickbacks. Meanwhile, Floyd grew increasingly nervous. He called Bryce repeatedly, leaving desperate messages about wanting to make things right. Bryce ignored them all. The final piece fell into place when Dominic obtained records from Floyd's pharmaceutical company. Floyd had been stealing samples of medications, the same ones prescribed to Adriana, and selling them on the side, splitting profits with Ray. "We have enough," Max confirmed after reviewing all the evidence. "More than enough to invalidate the power of attorney, file criminal charges, and ensure you're protected in the divorce." "When do we move?" Bryce asked. "According to your surveillance, they have another appointment scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. That's our moment." Bryce nodded. "Make the arrangements." "And Max? I want them destroyed. Not just legally, completely." "Understood," Max replied, recognizing the cold determination in his client's eyes. Over the next few days, Bryce maintained his performance flawlessly. He expressed appropriate concern when Adriana claimed new symptoms. He nodded understandingly when Ray suggested they should consider more aggressive treatment options. He even apologized to Floyd for their argument, suggesting they have dinner soon to clear the air. The night before the appointment, Adriana approached him in his home office. "You've been working late every night," she observed, leaning against the doorframe. "The Rivera Project?" "Among other things," Bryce replied vaguely. Adriana moved behind him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "You should take a break. Come to bed early." Bryce felt her touch like acid on his skin, but forced a smile. "I'll be up soon. Just need to finish these projections." After she left, he opened his laptop and sent a single message to Max, Dominic, and the rest of his team. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Execute as planned." Chapter 7. Checkmate. Thursday dawned clear and crisp. Bryce left for work at his usual time, kissing Adriana goodbye as if it were any other day. But instead of going to his office, he met with his assembled team at Max's law firm to review the final preparations. "Hospital security has been briefed," Dominic confirmed. "They'll be positioned discreetly, but ready to intervene if necessary. The court clerk will have Judge Alvarez standing by for emergency orders if needed," Max added. "And the DA's office has reviewed our evidence package. They're prepared to file charges immediately upon our signal." Bryce nodded, his expression resolute. "And the accounts?" "All joint accounts have been frozen as of this morning," his financial advisor, Teresa, reported. "Your business assets are secure behind the new corporate structure. We've also flagged all your properties with fraud alerts to prevent any unauthorized sales or transfers." At 1:30 p.m., Bryce received confirmation that Ray had picked up Adriana. Surveillance showed Floyd joining them in Ray's luxury sedan. As expected, they were headed to the specialist's office. "They're moving," Bryce announced. "Let's finish this." When Ray, Adriana, and Floyd arrived at the medical building, they found the usual parking area cordoned off for maintenance. Forced to use the main entrance, they walked into the trap Bryce had carefully laid. As they approached the specialist reception area, they were met by two uniformed security officers and Maxwell Thornton in his most imposing charcoal suit. "Mr. Kessler, Mrs. Harrington, Mr. Harrington," Max greeted them formally. "If you please follow me." "What is this?" Ray demanded. "We have an appointment." "That appointment has been canceled," Max replied coolly. "Dr. Westfield is currently meeting with investigators from the state medical board regarding certain irregularities in his practice." Adriana's confident facade cracked. "What are you talking about? Where's Bryce?" "Mr. Harrington is waiting for you in conference room A. I suggest you cooperate fully. Security will escort you." Floyd took a step back. "I'm not involved in this. I just came to support Adriana." "Really?" Max raised an eyebrow. "That's interesting, considering the evidence we have regarding your role in obtaining unauthorized pharmaceuticals. The DEA is particularly interested in speaking with you, Mr. Harrington." The color drained from Floyd's face as they were led to a large conference room where Bryce sat at the head of a long table, flanked by Dominic, Teresa, and two stern-faced individuals introduced as representatives from the district attorney's office. "Please sit," Bryce instructed calmly. Ray recovered first, his arrogance surfacing. "What is this theatrical production supposed to accomplish, Bryce? If you have concerns about Adriana's treatment, we could have discussed them privately. Like you discussed the power of attorney with me?" Bryce countered. "Or perhaps like you discussed the fake Swiss clinic and your non-existent Dr. Lancaster?" Adriana shot her father a panicked look. "Dad, he's bluffing," Ray hissed. "He has nothing." Bryce nodded to Dominic, who activated a projector. On the wall appeared a series of surveillance photos. Adriana jogging effortlessly in the park while supposedly suffering from debilitating fatigue. Floyd and Adriana entering his apartment building. Ray meeting with Dr. Westfield in a parking garage, exchanging an envelope. "This is just the beginning," Bryce said quietly. "I have text messages, bank records, witness statements, even your ex-wife's testimony, Ray. Every minute of this elaborate fraud has been documented." Adriana's composure collapsed entirely. "You been spying on me? On us?" "Rich, coming from the woman who's been systematically lying to her husband while sleeping with his brother," Max interjected. "The real question is what charges you'll be facing." Floyd stood abruptly. "I want immunity. I'll testify against Ray. This was all his idea. He pressured Adriana and me into it." "You spineless coward," Ray snarled, lunging toward Floyd before security intervened. "Sit down, Mr. Kessler," one of the DA representatives ordered. "You're in enough trouble without adding assault to the list." Bryce watched the chaos with detached calm, finally raising a hand for silence. "Here's what's going to happen. The fraudulent power of attorney has already been invalidated this morning by Judge Alvarez. The medical fraud charges are being processed as we speak. The Financial Crimes Division is freezing all associated accounts pending investigation." He turned to face each of them individually. "Ray, you're looking at multiple felony counts including fraud, practicing medicine without a license, and criminal conspiracy. Floyd, you'll be charged with theft of controlled substances, fraud, and conspiracy at minimum. And Adriana," his voice softened slightly as he addressed his wife, "fraud, conspiracy, attempted grand theft. Plus, of course, the divorce proceedings, which begin today." Adriana's tears fell freely now. "Bryce, please. I can explain. Dad convinced me you were going to leave me. He said this was the only way to secure my future. Save the performance," Bryce replied coldly. "I've seen your texts. Remember? The real you, not this victim you're pretending to be. What do you want?" Ray demanded, his authoritative demeanor crumbling. "Money? Is that it? We can make a deal." Bryce stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "What I want is justice. You try to destroy me, financially, professionally, personally. Now you'll experience the consequences." As if on cue, the door opened, and two police officers entered. "Raymond Kessler, Floyd Harrington, Adriana Harrington, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, financial crimes, and medical fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Chapter 8. The Fall. The arrests made headlines across the city. Prominent former CFO arrested in elaborate fraud scheme screamed the business section. Construction magnate uncovers family betrayal, declared another. In the days that followed, more details emerged as Bryce's carefully gathered evidence was processed by authorities. Dr. Westfield surrendered his medical license rather than face a lengthy investigation. Patricia Wilcox, the notary who had falsified documents, agreed to testify against Ray in exchange for reduced charges. Ray, facing the most serious charges, watched his carefully cultivated reputation crumble. Former colleagues distanced themselves. Exclusive club memberships were quietly revoked. Philanthropic organizations removed his name from donor walls. At his bail hearing, the judge, a former adversary from his corporate days, set bail at $5 million, far beyond what Ray could access with his accounts frozen. Floyd, desperate to save himself, offered to testify against both Ray and Adriana. His pharmaceutical employer fired him immediately upon learning of his arrest. With no income and his reputation destroyed, He found himself abandoned by the fair-weather friends who had enjoyed his previously lavish lifestyle. Adriana perhaps suffered the most immediate social consequences. Friends who had sympathized with her illness now shunned her. Her carefully cultivated image as a brave patient fighting a rare disease transformed overnight into that of a manipulative fraudster. Released on bail, she returned to find the locks changed at the home she had shared with Bryce, her possessions packed in boxes in the garage. Bryce, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding what they had tried to destroy. He held a transparent meeting with all his clients, explaining the situation and assuring them that his business remained strong. Most stayed loyal, impressed by his integrity in handling the crisis. 2 weeks after the arrests, Bryce received an unexpected visitor at his office, his mother, Eleanor. "The lawyers say Floyd is considering a plea deal," she said without preamble. 20 years reduced to 7 if he testifies against Ray and Adriana. Bryce nodded. "That's what I heard." Eleanor studied her eldest son's face. "Are you okay?" "I will be," he replied honestly. "The business is stable. The divorce proceedings are moving forward smoothly, given the circumstances. The DA says the case is solid." "That's not what I meant." Bryce sighed, allowing his carefully maintained composure to slip slightly. "I trusted them, Mom. Both of them. I keep wondering if I missed signs earlier, if I was just blind." "Stop," Eleanor interrupted firmly. "They betrayed you because they're deeply flawed people, not because you failed in any way. Your father would be proud of how you've handled this." After she left, Bryce received a call from Max. "Ray's attorney is reaching out for a deal." "What kind of deal?" "They want you to advocate for leniency with the DA. In exchange, Ray will transfer title to his lake house property to you and provide information on others involved in similar schemes." "Tell them no deal," Bryce replied without hesitation. "Ray faces the full consequences." That evening, as Bryce worked late in his home office, his doorbell rang. To his surprise, Adriana stood on his doorstep, looking nothing like the polished, confident woman he had married. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. "5 minutes," she pleaded. "Please, Bryce." Against his better judgment, he allowed her into the foyer, but no further. "I know you hate me," she began. "I don't hate you," Bryce interrupted. "Hate requires emotional investment. I feel nothing for you anymore." Adriana flinched. "I deserve that. But I need you to know it didn't start out as a scheme. When the affair began, it was just a terrible mistake. Dad found out, and instead of exposing us, he saw an opportunity." "So you're the victim?" Bryce's voice dripped with sarcasm. "No, I'm trying to say I made choices, horrible, unforgivable choices. I could have stopped it at any point. I didn't. That's on me." She took a shaky breath. "The DA offered me a deal. 5 years instead of 20 if I testify against Dad. And you want my blessing? I want to do one right thing in this mess," she whispered. "What would hurt Ray most? What would bring you the most justice?" Bryce studied her, searching for manipulation and finding only defeated resignation. "Take the deal, Adriana. Testify against him. Not for me, for yourself. Maybe you'll find a way to live with what you've done." As she turned to leave, she paused. "I did love you once, before greed poisoned everything." "It doesn't matter anymore," Bryce replied, closing the door. Chapter 9. Aftermath. 6 months later, the legal proceedings had reached their conclusions. Ray received 25 years for multiple felony counts, his appeals denied by judges who remembered his arrogance during his corporate reign. At 68, it was effectively a life sentence. Floyd accepted his plea deal, receiving 7 years plus 5 years probation. The once charming younger brother now shuffled through prison in standard-issue clothing, his manipulative smile replaced by wary vigilance. Adriana testified against her father as promised, receiving a 5-year sentence with possibility of parole after 3. The divorce was finalized with Bryce receiving all marital assets given the circumstances. The medical fraud charges resulted in additional restitution payments that would ensure Adriana would live modestly for years after her release. On a crisp autumn morning, Bryce stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for Harrington Community Center, a project he had developed on land previously owned by Ray's exclusive country club, which had been forced to sell assets after the scandal devastated its membership. "We're building something that will serve everyone in this community," Bryce told the assembled crowd, "not just those privileged enough to afford exclusivity." The irony wasn't lost on local observers. Ray's former sanctuary would now become a place serving the very people he had spent his life avoiding. After the ceremony, Dominic approached him. "My sources say Ray's not adjusting well to prison life. Apparently, his cellmate is a former employee who lost everything in one of Ray's corporate takeovers. Cosmic justice." Bryce nodded, unsurprised. "And Floyd, working in the prison library, keeps to himself. Word is he's writing a memoir, though no publisher will touch it. Adriana, minimum security women's facility. She's teaching art classes to other inmates." Dominic hesitated. "She asks about you occasionally." "There's nothing to say," Bryce replied firmly. That evening, Bryce hosted a small gathering at his home. The core team who had helped him through the ordeal. Max and his wife, Dominic, Teresa, and a few loyal clients who had stood by him. Also present was Carmen Vasquez, an architectural engineer he had been seeing casually for the past 2 months. As they enjoyed dinner on his terrace overlooking the city, Max raised a glass. "To justice served. And to new beginnings," Carmen added, her warm smile directed at Bryce. Later, as the party wound down, Carmen found Bryce alone by the fire pit. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. "Just reflecting," he replied. "6 months ago, I thought I had lost everything that mattered. And now?" Bryce considered the question carefully. "Now I understand what actually matters. Integrity, truth, building something real. Not forgiveness?" Carmen asked gently. "Some betrayals go too deep for forgiveness," Bryce replied, his expression resolute. "But that doesn't mean you can't build something new from the ashes." The next morning, Bryce received a letter from Floyd, passed along through their mother. He considered burning it unread, but finally opened it. "Bryce, I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't give it if I were in your position. But I need you to know that I understand now what I destroyed. Not just your trust or our family, but my own humanity. You won with honor. You could have destroyed us in countless ways, but chose justice through proper channels. Even in your revenge, you showed more integrity than I've shown in my entire life. I'll spend the rest of my days knowing that the brother I betrayed was the better man in every way that matters. Floyd." Bryce folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer without response. Some debts could never be repaid, some wounds never fully healed. But he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to build a life defined by his own terms rather than the betrayals he had survived. The lawsuit against Dr. Westfield and his collaborators concluded with a substantial settlement that Bryce donated entirely to medical ethics education programs. The power of attorney scandal led to legislative reforms closing the loopholes Ray had exploited. 1 year to the day after the confrontation in the doctor's office, Bryce visited the 3 graves he had installed on a remote corner of his property. Simple stone markers bearing only the names Ray Kessler, Floyd Harrington, and Adriana Harrington, with their dates of death listed as the day of their arrests. "You died to me that day," he said quietly to the empty markers. "Whatever happens when you're eventually released doesn't change that." He placed no flowers, offered no prayers, just acknowledgement that the past was buried, allowing him to build a future untethered from betrayal. As he turned to leave, his phone rang. Carmen, reminding him about dinner with her parents that evening. For the first time in a long while, Bryce smiled with genuine warmth. The betrayal had nearly destroyed him, but in surviving it, he had discovered his true strength. Not in forgiveness, but in the unyielding resolve to create something better from the ashes of deception. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.